You have no place in your vocabulary to believe that you can't.
Wow.
You have no place to believe that you can't, but you have every place to believe that you can.
You're listening to HBCU in Entertainment, where diversity, equity, and inclusion refine the future of entertainment. I'm your host, Stacy Milner, and welcome back to another episode. Today, I want to introduce you to a woman who is trailblazing the path and creating opportunities for diversity in theater, Dr. Tonea Stewart. Please allow me to read her bio. Dr. Tonea Stewart is a professional actress, play director, National Museum exhibit director, and a former tenured professor and dean of the College of Visual and Performing Arts at Alabama State University. She is a native of Greenwood, Mississippi, but living in Montgomery, Alabama, where she has been since 1990. Dr. Stewart is a Jackson State University alum and a National Black College Alumni Hall of Fame inductee, whose screen and television credits include A Time to Kill, The Rosa Parks Story, Mississippi Burning, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, ER, Touched by an Angel, and so many more. Without further ado, here's Dr. Tonea Stewart. Hello, Dr. Stewart. Welcome to the show. We're so happy to have you.
You are so smart. Thank you for having the show. I'm just always in awe of you, Stacy. I just love you so much and appreciate all that you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you. You know the labor of love that it takes when we do impactful work. So
that's right.
So happy to have you. So now let's get right into some questions.
Okay.
You began acting in 1969 and
Mm-hmm.
became the first African-American to direct and star in a leading role on stage at the New Stage Theater, the most prestigious equity theater in Mississippi.
That's right.
Did you always know that you wanted to act, or was it something you discovered later in life?
It was something that was a parallel to my life. I thought early on that I was going to be a medical doctor. My mother was ill with high blood pressure, and family members in the neighborhood, community members, everybody's sick. I just wanted to heal, wanted to help. Mm-hmm. And then every Sunday after church, my mother would have dinner for the elder mothers of the church, so of the mothers board. So the ones whose family members were no longer around. So they would come to our house and she would make everybody stay in the living room while she went into the kitchen. She didn't want anybody in the kitchen with her. And she said, you all just sing and talk to the neighbors while I get the dinner on the table. And so my sister would play the piano, my daddy would sing, my grandmother would dance, and I started imitating whoever was absent. Wow. From a little girl. They used to love to see this little bouncy one come in the room pretending to be Miss Suggs or pretending to be Miss Cora. And I would have their personalities down pat. Wow. So the acting was a parallel to my growing up in the Delta of Mississippi. But I did not at first have that as a desire. It was when I got scholarships to college and ended up at Jackson State University in Mississippi on a biology scholarship because of my desire to be a medical doctor. And I was winning science fair projects. I should have brought my bracelet to show you the charms for being first and second place with these projects. And while in my freshman year in college, we had to dissect a raccoon. And the professor had us to stand around the table. And it wasn't the dissecting part that bothered me. It was his eyes and the hair. And I found myself just fading back away from the table until I had made it to the door. And I got outside of that room and I slid down that wall just crying like a baby. I can't do this. I can't do this. And my professor came out and asked me what was I doing there. And I told him, I said, I can't stand the hair and the eyes. I can't. And he said, I don't understand. And I said, it's okay. And I left and ran over to Dansby Hall where my speech and drama teacher was in his office. And I
Mm-hmm.
walked into his office and I was crying. And he said, I've been waiting on you. Now, what is it? I said, waiting on me? He said, every time a play comes from your high school in Greenwood, you were the star. And you haven't said anything about acting since you've been here. And I said,
Wow.
no, I came as a biology major. He said, well, you know, you need to change your major. I said, I'll change it today. And that's where it
Wow.
started.
Amazing. What a story. You're best known for your role as Miss Etta Kibbe, right?
Yeah,
The Heat of the Night, which I love that show. And I know it probably dates our audience, but y'all need to check it out. It's an amazing piece of work that was done for television and movies and all that. Okay. But anyway, you were also nominated for an NAACP Image Award for your role in the film adaptation from John Grisham's A Time to Kill. Wow.
right,
So
right.
throughout your acting career, like what was one of your favorite roles to play and why?
I it's hard for me to say a favorite. A lot of traction came from doing A Time to Kill, and from In the Heat of the Night, and from Touched by an Angel. So I loved all of them. I
Mm,
loved all of them. Uh, A Time to Kill and In the Heat of the Night have really made open doors for me
mhm,
and given me a great platform to the public.
mm,
I love doing both of them. I love being the older ladies that I started out doing as a child. And
mhm.
I loved being wife to Samuel Jackson because it was so funny on the set one day. He looked at me and he said, wait a minute, Tonea. Wait a minute now. Did you ever go to NASA? I said, yeah, I went to NASA. He said, oh, no. And he said, first of all, they could have cast my wife for this role because you all were so much alike. I said, somebody else told me that. He said, and second of all, I know I knew you. He said, Joan Lewis. I said, oh, then it all came back.
Oh,
NASA
wow.
from our 4 years in college. He was at Morehouse. I was at Jackson State.
Mhm.
So that was a rich experience. And I try to stay in close touch with him and with Latanya. They are both just wonderful people to me.
Oh, that's
Um,
awesome. So
so
what do you think it is that your experiences in life, you know, the what you've had with your mother and what you thought you wanted to do, but then just how you immersed yourself, right? What do you think it is about you that you uniquely bring to the characters that you have played?
Frank Silvera identified it as truth. He
Mm,
identified it as real. Even though the roles I've played many times, the mama roles, the grandmama roles, I've been mama and grandmama to just about every superstar we have.
mhm,
Um, it's because I have so much respect for the mothers and the grandmothers and the
mhm,
legacy that they made. And so maybe being earthy, being real, like I'm talking to you now, and I
mhm,
probably should edit what I'm saying, but I don't feel comfortable doing that. I
mhm.
like to be truthful.
And by the way, that's what I love about you. And I'm sure
Mm,
that's what others have respected and loved about you through the years.
thank you.
Mhm.
It's who I am. I believe in truth. I believe in the motto and in the biblical verse, ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. I
Mhm.
feel free. I had a great grandfather who was blinded as a child because he wanted to learn to read and write. And he always would talk to me about truth. He would always talk to me about honesty. He would always talk to me about freedom. He
Mm.
said, I was born into slavery, but you were born free. Understand what freedom is. Freedom is you have no boundaries. Freedom is nobody should control you. Freedom is honesty to yourself. And when you know that you don't have the capacity to do something, then tell yourself, well, that's just what I'm not able to do that, but I can do this.
Mm.
So
Know what
that's
you
what
can
Frank
do.
Silvera asked us to do in the American Theater Being. When he directed me at Santa Barbara, and he was directing contributions, he moved into my apartment for a week, had the cast to come in, and he said, I want you to be his grandmother. I want you to Wake him up in the morning when it's time to go to school. I want you to cook his meal and just pretend I'm not here. I said, well, if I'm going to be truthful, how can I pretend you're not here? And he said, oh, girl, you cooking. We had it was a rich experience. I'll never forget it.
Wow.
He
I
had a
love
hard
it.
time articulating what being was, so I'm trying to write the manual now. My dissertation was on his theory of being. So
Mhm.
I'm writing now the steps that I understand because Bia tried to write it, Frank tried to write it. They said it was something you could not necessarily write, you have to experience it. So
Mm,
everything that we do should be based on experience. If
right.
I'm playing a role and I have never been in that situation, I need to understand that character's background. I need to get a sense of why they say certain words. Why do they choose? When we watch the soap operas, the actress will say, I was accosted. But in my environment, we would say, he walked in the room and he jumped at me.
Mm-hmm.
There's just
Mm-hmm.
a difference. So to say accosted is one thing, but jumping at me requires something else.
Right, right. Oh,
So
I think this is a good segue because you were the dean of the College of Visual and Performing Arts at Alabama State.
yes,
During that time, how did you prepare? And I'm hearing that in our conversation right now, which is why I want to move to this question, is because, how did you prepare and equip the students to excel, right, in this way and at such a high level?
they are doing extremely well. And one of the things that I applied throughout my time at Alabama State for 28 years was the American Theater of Being technique. I
Mm.
worked on them on facing the truth. I, their exercises for um, characterization and for realization and for honesty was to face life and death.
Mm.
Face up the fact of what does it mean that you're alive? When you're breathing, hold your breath. So if you're in control of everything, just keep holding it. How long can you do that? You have to gasp for something that you cannot see, which is air. You
Mm.
gasp for something that you feel, but you can't catch it in your hand and say that I've got air. So you have to trust and have faith. And that faith is something that's generated from the inside. And it's a spiritual thing. So
Mhm.
I always talk to the students about knowing the truth, being truthful, dealing with honesty, facing who you are, and respecting, like I respect you. Respect a person for what God given gift they have.
Mhm.
Envying them gets you nowhere. You're wasting time.
Right,
Being jealous of them gets you nowhere. You're messing up your mind. But if
right.
you are in touch with yourself, if you are ready to work with what you have and you know that you got to work it a little bit more to make it stronger or better. If you're a dancer, you weren't born dancing. You came, you had the rhythm, you understand what to do to be a dancer, but you need to work on it. You
Mm.
need to work on it. You need to understand the theory. You need to practice. You need to rehearse. You need to push yourself a little further.
Right.
So it
I
was
think that sometimes with the young generation that they don't necessarily understand that there is discipline that comes along with perfecting a craft
that's the
that you
word.
say that this is what you want to do, but it really has to become a second nature, right, to you that this
Exactly.
is what you do.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I want to take a moment because, lady, you have a very impressive background. And so I just want the audience to know, all right, you have been making history for a long time throughout your career. First African-American female to receive a doctorate from Florida State School of Theater. I mean, hello.
Mhm.
First McKnight Doctoral Fellow in Theater Arts.
Mhm.
The first African-American to direct and star in a leading role on stage at the New Stage Theater. I
A
mean,
predominantly white theater at that. Yeah.
yes. So with that, what were some of the challenges that you faced being a trailblazer and how did you overcome them? Because, it's not quite that different from what we have to deal with now to achieve, these types of accolades?
Well, the most important thing is to believe in yourself. And the second thing is to believe that you can. Because if you don't believe it, nobody else will. And if you listen to the naysayers, you'll stand still. They'll have you looking back and constantly feeling like you're going to fall. Right. You don't need that. We need to always press forward. We need to always think positive. And thinking positive means I can, with the help of my God, I will, with the support of my family. And sometimes your family might not support you. So if they don't, you have to support them by showing them who you are and what you have to offer. Everybody in my family didn't think very much of acting, right. But I just had a wonderful mother who was in the arts. She was once a nurse. She was a teacher. She was a pianist for the church choir. She was a choral director. She wrote speeches, and she pushed us out there. And she always made us feel like you can. You have no place in your vocabulary to believe that you can't. Wow. You have no place to believe that you can't, but you have every place to believe that you can.
That is such a good word. Yeah, we have to tweet that one out and put that one out there. That is so good. So now I want to move, because now you are retired, supposedly. But I love it, because my heart is the same way. But you have two big projects that you're working on right now, the first being Suited for Success. Oh, so yes. I'd love you to tell us more about that.
Suited for Success, I believe it was a godsend, because when I lost my student Twitch, Stephen Boss, who was with Ellen DeGeneres, we were on the Today Show, and we had such a wonderful time coming back together and surprising him. And when we lost him to suicide, is what they announced. It was hard for me to accept that, and it still is. Losing him gave me a void, and it caused me to question myself. It caused me to say, what did I not do? I felt close to him. He could always call me, and he did. And we talked many times. As a matter of fact, we had talked about 3 weeks before this happened, because there was a request made of me to put him in touch with a woman that wanted to start a dance show. And we were talking about that, and he gave me the contacts, so how to send the material and all. And my children were really worried about me, because they said, Mama, you've got to stop beating up on yourself. I said, no, I'm just trying to understand why didn't he give me a sign? Why didn't I was going through the whys. And all of a sudden I got a call, an email, really it was an email from a young lady that said in her email that my mother died last June, and she made me promise to find this lady in Alabama that worked with young people, and she really believed in her students. And I'm told that that's you. And I really want to talk to you. So I followed up, and sure enough, her mother owned a men's clothing store in Georgia. I didn't know her mother, and I didn't know the young lady. But we finally met after going through a series of questions from my sons. My daughter
protecting
understood. Mom. Yeah, my daughter said, look at God, Mama, look at God. He's showing you something. My son said, Mama, you don't know nobody. You don't know these people. How you gonna go to Georgia? I'm coming. Let me go with you. So they did. My youngest son was coming in from California. My oldest son came in from Atlanta, and my daughter was already here in Montgomery. So we went with my husband and my brother-in-law, and I was going to rent a U-Haul truck, a big box truck, based on what she said to me. They said, you're not going to need that. Just get that van right there. I said, but get the van, Mama. Mama, get the van. Okay, got the van. We got there. This young lady was all truth. Her husband, her daughter, and two of her friends were waiting for us. She took us upstairs in her mother's very, very nice home. And she said, I've moved everything in here. She said, this is what you've come to get.
Wow.
I looked and I said to myself, my God, I don't even have any way to. I said, I knew I should have got that box truck. So we packed as much as we could in all of the SUVs and the van that we had, brought it back. And then I said, where am I going to put this? So then I called a friend who had closed his storage business some years ago. And to my surprise, he said, oh, you're in luck. I'm opening up a new storage facility because my son is moving back to Alabama and I'm going to let him run it, but it's not open yet. I said, oh my God, I've got vans and truckloads of stuff. He said, I tell you what, I'll meet you there and you'll be the first customer. I'm going to let you, what size space? I said, I'm going to need the largest space you have. And Stacy, I tell you, his largest space was too small.
Wow.
But we got everything in there. And then I was trying to figure, how do I honor this lady? How do I fulfill her wishes? Oh God, give me some direction. Her daughter said, it's left up to you. Whatever you want to do. My
Wow.
mother, I've taken care of my part. So I came up with Suited for Success. And that way, when a student is graduating from high school or college, and and she owned a men's clothing store. It was all men's clothing. Over 150 brand new tags hanging, never hem suits, slacks, belts, neckties, the whole gamut, just
Wow.
beautiful stuff. And I came up with this idea, and we would call it Henry Faye's Closet. Her name was Henry Faye. So it's
Mm.
Suited for Success from the American Theater of Being and the Tonea Stewart Scholarship Fund from Henry Faye's Closet.
Wow.
So uh, I have not officially launched it yet, but I'm ready to do it now. And you're the first one to hear about it, really,
Wow.
on a
Now, you
national
told me a
stage.
story about a young man receiving a suit, and tell that story.
Yeah, at the Performing Arts High School here, the principal called me, and she doesn't call me often, but she called me and she said, Dr. Stewart, I need you to lay hands on the student. I have a young man who is exceptionally good on the piano. He's doing a presentation and I need you to come. Please come. I said, I'll do my best. And I had to call her back and said I couldn't attend, but I want to do something for that student, even though I had never met him and never heard him. So I got a photographer, Jock Chandler, who helps me out a lot, to go with me. And I found a day to take him a suit. And I had $100 bill that was put in my hand. Oh, it's another story by a young lady that I was waiting in the car repair shop area, and she came up to me and told me to open up my hand, and she put this money in my hand. And I said, what are you doing? And she said, I don't know you, but God is telling me to do this. You take it. He has an assignment for you. You know what it is. You got to do your assignment. And there are people witnesses. I got witnesses who saw this happen. I took that money, was $200 that she put in my hand. I put 100 in an envelope, and I said, I'm going to take this to that young man. So I went to take him the suit. This part I didn't tell you. I asked for the principal. She was not there. Another faculty member was there. She said, who are you looking for? I said, I need the music teacher. There's a young man that plays the piano. She said, oh, I know what you're talking about. I'll take you. She took me to the classroom. I signed in as a guest at the school, and so did Mr. Chandler. And we got to the classroom, and this young man was mopping the floor.
Mm.
And I said, I'm sorry, I'm looking for your music director. And he said, oh, yes, she's right here. And so she came out. I said, I'm Tommy Stewart, Tonea Stewart. I'm here about the music. She said, oh, that's him right there. There was a young man that was mopping the floor.
Mopping the floor.
And
Wow.
I said, your name is Kai? He said, yeah. I said, I hear that you're wonderful. He said, thank you so much. I said, I came to bring you something. And I told him, I said, I lost my student to suicide in California. And I want you to know, wherever you go in the world, always know that there's somebody always watching you. Know that there's somebody there for you. Don't give up.
Mm.
Don't give up. Promise me you won't give up. He said, no, ma'am. I said, no matter how hard it gets, and I want you to take this suit. And he said, a suit? He said, I don't have a suit. I said, take this suit. This is your gift. And if you grow out of it, just keep a piece of it so you'll remember that somebody is always there to help you. And I
Wow.
brought you a little, and then his teacher stepped in. And of course, we were all shedding tears, the young men too.
Of course.
She said, Dr. Stewart, you don't know, but he just got a letter saying he's invited to Miami to do an internship. I said, really? She
Wow.
said, yeah, it's a very high honor. And she said, I think I'm going to go. I said, okay, well, when you get there, in this envelope is a little token of a little scholarship, just
Oh.
something small, but it might be just what you need when you're in the airport and you get a little hungry or something. And this is for you too. And he just held me and said, thank you.
Oh my
I met his
goodness.
mother at a program that I was director of for the King celebration. She came up to me. She said, we've never met, but you met my son. And I want you to know how much we thank you
Mm,
for doing that for my son. She said he performed in that suit
I love
in
it.
Miami at the presentation that he had to do. And that,
Wow.
that felt good. So
So
I'm
that's
hoping
why
that,
you need to do Dress for Success and continue to bless those other young men that come along the way who are going to need their first suit, right? Who are going to need to know that there's always somebody watching them and ready to help them. And you were
and
that
with the
angel.
program that you have, if someone needs a suit,
I will
we
let you
get
know.
their measurements and we'll send it to them so they can go into that career path that you're
Awesome.
setting them on.
I love it. All right. So now you have another big project too. The inaugural Theater of Being Acting Summit and
Yes.
Forum. So what I've read, that you created this summit in tribute of the late actor Frank, is it
Silvera.
Silvera?
Uh-huh.
Silvera, who was the founding father of the American Theater of Being. So tell us a little bit about that as well.
I've actually formed a foundation, nonprofit 501c3, which is also sponsored. It's a way anyone making a contribution for Suited for Success can get that 501c3 credit. And anyone wanting to help with the program, uh, I have the artifacts of Frank Silvera, B. Richards, and my own artifacts. Some of the stuff you see around here, like that. Or you can, yes, you can. You can see the black sequin is what I wore at Carnegie Hall when I performed. Artifacts like that I have of B. Richards myself, and mostly recordings of Frank Silvera. So what I've done, I'm trying my best to articulate Frank Silvera's theory. I've, I've done that part in the dissertation from Florida State University.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm trying to do the manual because I won't be here always. And my students from Alabama State University that studied the theater being under me, and of course, with the help of Whitman Mayo, who came, Grady from Sanford and Son, he was a part of Frank Silvera's theater being. The
Wow.
Amen Corner that Frank Silvera directed with B. Richards starring in it was the first ever all produced, directed, and everything about it, African American on Broadway. The
Wow.
Amen Corner by James Baldwin. That
Hmm.
show, Frank Silvera directed, and James Baldwin and he worked together on it. Frank Silvera was at Extra Studio, and when he walked out, so did Marlon Brando. They walked out together because of some of the discussions that they were having. And Frank started the American Theater Being, and it lived for a few years. After his death, everything was quiet about the American Theater Being. But in my research, I discovered so many major artists started out with Frank Silvera and was a part of it. Louis Gossett Jr., Howard Rollins, um, Ted, Art Evans, Whitman Mayo, Juanita Moore, Esther Roll, B.
Wow.
Richards. these names we know, Esther Roll from Good Times, we know
Right.
Juanita Moore from Imitation of Life. I've always loved that movie and loved her character.
Mm-hmm.
These persons worked with Frank Silvera and understood some of being. When I interviewed Esther Rose, she told me go to BIA. She can tell I did it, but I can't tell you how we did it. Juanita Moore said the same thing. She said, honey, what you need to do is talk to BIA. So BIA and I, after his death, became very close.
Mm.
And she came to Jackson State, where I was at first for 20 years. I worked at Jackson State in theater. She came to Jackson State to work with my students. And Bia told me, she said, sister, you have to be more mature than the students are here. I want to direct Mojo, but I'm not going to be able to use your students. There's one young man that seems to have it, and that was Jay Unger. And Jay Unger did very well with Bia. And she said, and you're going to have to play the wife in Mojo. I said, the wife with my student? She said, yeah. I said, oh, but Bia. She said, no, you're going to have to do it, sister. That's the only way we can do it. And
Wow.
sure enough, working with her after having worked with Frank Silvera some years earlier, it really gave me a real understanding of being. But then when I tried to articulate it, it was a problem. And so now, because I have time to be a little free of thought, I'm trying to pull it together because I want to leave something for anyone that can benefit from it to get. And so that's a major project for me,
Wow.
to do the American Theater Being Manual and do workshops. Now, the artifacts.
So that'll be you and me next thing, right? Because one of the things that I keep talking about, a lot of our HBCUs have theater programs. So how can we take this method, right, and bring as a traveling rotational something to the HBCUs to equip and prepare that next generation, actor. And I think that could be something that I would love to explore more with you, because one of the things that I know is that the industry often goes to the PWI's theater programs to source those talent, the next generation talent, but they're not doing that on our campuses. And so I think something like that needs to be in play. So I've always said, like, I'm sure there's like a big major production that happens every year for these schools. Are we in the seats? Is the industry coming? Do we bring casting folks in? That needs to be another place where those new faces and new voices can come to life across so many different levels of the industry. So I love it. And I can't wait to read all the information that you've sent me about these things. But you and I are going to have continued conversations, particularly around this, because I think this is incredible what you're doing.
Well, thank you so much. And to be honest, I've, I've, I've identified 5 or 6 of my students who can really help with this. On Broadway right now, I think it's her 18th year in Lion King, Benita Hamilton Caesar. And she's worked with me on this manual. In California, who's doing a lot of writing and fantastic actress, my daughter-in-law, Elizabeth, well, we call her LJ Stewart. She's prepared to expound on being. They've had great input, getting ready for Broadway right now. Leona Michelle Weaver is doing Nina Simone. She directed and wrote shows about her in Europe and performances in Paris, and she performed off Broadway. Now Kim Fields is directing her to perform this show on Broadway. She is very much involved with being, and she exercised being. Many of these students ended up on full scholarships. Well, all of my students that went to college, to graduate school, had full scholarships. And they went from Brandeis to Yale, and that's another one. Marcus Henderson is in Hollywood, and he's on I never can get the name of the show, but he was in Get Out, and he's in a series right now. where they are
Okay.
in the fire department. Uh, Marcus Henderson is ready to do that. Antonio Woodard out of the Oakland, California area. And
Mm,
he performs in Washington and in Equity Theaters. He's gotten all kinds of awards as an
wow.
equity actor. Uh, they are all ready. I've identified these students. Shawanda Curry is working with the high school students. Sam Smith is working with high school students, and he's also a professional actor doing a lot of work in New York. I'm just so proud of them. We have a core group that can start this movement.
Right.
We're looking at taking workshops to different parts of the country, but we're not moving without getting with you, Stacy. We need you. We need your hand.
Oh,
Um, and I'm so grateful that you're open to this because it's something that needs to be done. When I listen to Viola Davis talk about her characters and her experiences, she is a being actress.
wow. I
When I
love it.
listen to oh the guy on This Is Us, we've never talked.
Oh, J.K. Rowling?
Which one?
J.K. Rowling?
No, Sterling.
I mean, Sterling, sorry. Oh, you know what I'm
Yes,
thinking about? I'm thinking about the other. Never
that
mind.
Sterling.
Yes, Sterling.
Sterling. The first time I watched This Is Us, I said, "Oh my God, this
Yes,
is being."
yeah.
I screamed. I called students, and they said, "Doc, we're watching it. Somebody has touched the nerve that it's there. They even can identify it in people." The
Wow.
young lady that played Billie Holiday, no, that played was it Billie Holiday? Ah, she's a singer, and she
Mm,
was talking about how hard it was when she get into the character. Mm. Benita called me. Benita called her and talked with her because
wow.
she told her, she said, you got to understand what you were doing. You were going into the zone of being. And
Wow.
she explained to her. So we have a core. The beauty of being is, especially for the African American actor, there's a lot of angles to it, but let me tell you one. The beauty of being for the African American actor is to to understand that you exist in a complete and perfect state. You're already perfect.
Right.
You're already perfect. And you lack no essential characteristic. You do not have to press your hair
Right.
to exist. You do
Right.
not have to color your eyes.
Right.
You've got to love you, love you,
And B.
and be.
I love it. Well, listen, I that will bring us to the end. But you are incredible. And I was going to ask you a final question, but I'm like, you have given them the next generation nuggets, your history. You're a trailblazer, and you're somebody that I deeply respect, and I am so honored that we got this time together
Me
to
too.
go from where you started to what you did academically, what you continue to do, and just the impact that you make. And you've got me as a partner to support you and do whatever we need to do going forward. But I cannot thank you enough for joining us today on our podcast.
Thank you so much. One last point about being is it applies to any aspect of the art, to music, it applies to lighting, it applies to sound, it applies to costume, all of that. Because if you are truthful and if you search for the truth, it will set you free.
Woo. We'll drop the mic on that one.
Love
Thank you.
you.
Love you too. All right. We'll talk
All right.
soon. All
All
right.
right.
Bye. I want to thank you for joining me today and tuning in to another episode of HBCU in Entertainment. If this episode resonated with you, please comment, rate, and review the podcast. Your feedback is important. Until next time, know that I appreciate you lending me your ears, and I'll catch you in the next episode.